What else is on your mind these
Well,
days?
dude, you've just been on this tangent about pornography and
I know, I
OnlyFans
can't
and
stop talking about
brothels.
it. Yeah.
We need to reel it back in.
Yeah.
So what's new with you?
Man, what is new with me? Um, I'm just busy at the clinic, seeing people every day. But it's fun, it's like I want to talk to you about this because it's all like self-imposed stress. Like you know what I'm talking about. You're
That you
super
have got going on?
like everything we're doing, it's all like stuff that we wanted to have, right?
Yeah.
So like who are we to complain about it? This is a good conversation, I think, because like we don't have I don't know about you, like a corporate structure to be breathing down our neck to tell us what to do all the time. So like to me that was more stressful than what we're doing right now, which is being on our own. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
hmm
But also it's still stressful because it's like self-imposed stress, but it's
Well,
not. If
well, it's
that makes sense.
self-imposed, but it's stress nonetheless.
Yeah.
So whether or not it's self-imposed, it's still stress,
Right. Yeah.
right? I think the thing that makes it a little bit better for us is we chose it,
Right.
right? I think people who have the imposed stress on them that they have no say in the matter, that's probably a harder pill to swallow sometimes.
Which to me lessens the blow of the negative stress. Does that make sense? Like getting into a state of distress, which is
Like
a
eustress
negative.
versus distress.
Yes, exactly. But like to me that like it's still stressful because we're busy all the time because we're business owners, but at the same time there's no boss telling us what to do, which to me was more stressful in the beginning. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it has there's perks to both,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes it would be nice just to have your checklist, right?
Yeah.
Here's what you're doing this week. Here's the things you need to get done by the end of the week. Here's your project. This is your focus, right?
Yeah.
And so we've talked about that before. Part of the challenge is finding which hat to wear at a given time,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to shelf this hat to focus on this hat. And that's, I think, the biggest challenge for me sometimes is just priorities,
Yep.
right? Like I think it was Steve Jobs. He said success is not what you say yes to, but what you say no to,
Mhm.
right? And so that I get caught up in the minutia sometimes.
Do you
Of
say yes to a lot of things that you shouldn't, you think?
I've gotten better about it over the years, but I think it's more I think in general people who are in people the service industry, service professions
Mhm.
probably are inclined to that.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say? Right,
Um
if you're in the service profession like you're a hairdresser, a physical therapist, massage therapist,
okay.
personal trainer, et cetera, you're probably a people person.
Yep.
You probably got into it to help people, right? So I
Yep.
think that type of person is more inclined to, at least I know I am, but I think in my experience, a lot of personal trainers are more inclined to say yes, right?
Okay.
Because you want to help, you want to service others.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it is hard to say
Like
no
you were
because
talking about earlier with pornography and
yeah.
brothels,
Yeah.
servicing others.
Mhm. That's what I do.
That's what you
Yep.
do.
Just
But no,
yep.
I'm just playing. But that is that's the balance, I think, is finding what is really going to move the needle and focusing on those things and trying to calm down and put a lot of your energy into that and then calm down the things that it's like, okay, if it literally can wait a month, is it really that big of a deal?
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying. Yeah, it's that balance of it's hard because again, we are in the service industry, so it's hard to say no to people because they want our help, but we have to also have our boundaries, and I hate that word. It's such a
Why?
overused word, I think nowadays. Everybody's like, "Oh, we need boundaries, we need this and that."
I think it's a good word.
It's a good word, but I think it's definitely overused these days.
Well, what are you struggling with stress wise? It sounds like there's something that,
No, I think just hmm, maybe the flow. Like you said, within a corporate structure, it's more streamlined. They kind of just give you a plan. They tell you
Mhm.
what to do essentially.
Yeah.
And I did that for 5 years, 6 years, or whatever, and it essentially turns you into a robot, and you kind of forget about the like the finer things of helping people. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Well,
And
I could see how that would be true if you were given very little freedom to
which is
decide how you
yes.
implemented your treatment plans or things like
And
that.
to me, that's what the corporate structure did for healthcare. It doesn't give you the freedom that you really need to help people. There's too many time constraints. There's too many productivity standards that you need, where
Yeah.
I think you worry about that too much as opposed to worrying about the person.
Yeah.
Where I think now I'm at the opposite end of the spectrum, where I'm stretching myself a lot for people, which is good, but I have to bring it back a little bit more to center. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, when I was working for a fitness company, one of my first
Mm-hmm.
personal training jobs was a gym in Naperville. And when I got promoted the second time, I was promoted to almost a purely like almost 80% administrative sales role.
Mm-hmm.
And once a month, we'd review KPIs, which are key performance
Right.
indicators. And I did not like doing that because it was always result based versus action based,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yep.
the reality is you can't always control. Well, you can't control the result, right? And you can control the action you take. So saying, "Oh, well, how many new personal training clients were there or how many new assessments were done?" I would have much rather had it be focused on like the assessment one wasn't a bad one because you're going out there and connecting with people, but you couldn't always control the result, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think there's a lot of great things about corporations and, working for somebody if that's a better
Right.
fit for you.
For sure.
But one of the things I did not like is just that focus on always having to grow, right? Which I think is going to be more prevalent when you have shareholders and the board of directors, right? And all
Yeah.
that stuff, right? They're always expecting it to go more and more and more. Where
Mm,
I think when you're self-employed, you could probably more easily find that enough level, right? I've got
yeah.
X amount of clients, I'm making X amount of money. Maybe I've got a couple employees. That's enough,
Yeah.
right? But I
Right.
think when you're working for a large company, especially these big healthcare
Should we
companies,
call them out?
I'll leave that up to you.
Maybe
You've got
later.
stronger
I'll
feelings
have a
about
whole
it.
episode about me calling out
Yeah,
those companies,
we'll just do it. We'll do it fast.
but they know who they are.
Brian will throw out names, and then you'll just go boom,
Yeah.
attack him for 30 seconds.
Yeah, but not my favorite places to work for. Anyways, I had my whole thing with this podcast was to ask AI. So I wanted it to be Q&A with AI. I think I texted you this.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, this is Art of Wellness episode 4. Thanks for coming. Thanks for tuning in. We got Danny here again. We're back with him. This is our second episode, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We did the first one together.
Yeah, number 1.
This is episode 4.
There we
Thanks
go.
for listening, subscribing, all that good stuff. And we got AI asking us questions about health and wellness. So
Did you say please to it?
I don't think I did.
Dude, you got to throw the please in.
I know.
I always say
good.
please to Alexa. Thank you. When they take
What
over,
happens if you don't?
when they take over someday,
Crap.
they'll remember who
They're
was
gonna
polite
Kill me first.
and who was screaming at them all the time.
Yeah.
I'm
But
calling out my buddy CJ. Man, he was so mean to Alexa back in the day. Just be screaming at her after we
do you
got
have one of those, Alexa? At
Yeah,
home?
the Echo Show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Those creep me out.
Really?
Don't they like talk to you at night or something?
I don't think they do unprompted unless they're giving you some sort of reminder.
But they're listening, right? I guess just like anything's listening now. So
I swear, sometimes I'm on my phone and I'll be like, let's say I'm just talking to you about, oh, my egress window in my basement broke. And then before I know it, I open Google and type the letter E, and it says egress windows near you. And I'm like, what the heck was that, dude? That's not cool.
Yeah.
Actually, one time I took a picture of a window. So it's just sitting in the gallery on my, on my iPhone.
Yeah.
And then a window ad popped up.
Yeah.
So what's that about?
I mean, yeah. Us
Now it could be completely coincidence, but it freaked me out. And
us talking
I'm certain.
about pornography in the beginning, we're gonna get a bunch of porn ads now on
Well, I think
our
you're more
phone.
likely to get it than me, but
Yeah,
it's
probably.
gonna look at your cookies and stuff.
Just
Got no
yeah,
cookies
you
on
get
my phone.
all the viruses in the world, but um,
But
yeah,
ChatGPT,
that's what I use. Is that what you use for
I,
AI?
I
There's so
tend to
many
I
AI
tend to use
stuff
it
now.
more. It just because
Yeah,
it's the first one I was exposed to, and I've been pretty content with it so
yeah.
far. It has been a game changer for nutrition coaching. So nowadays, at this point, I could just someone says, "Hey, I want a 7-day meal plan based on X amount of calories, X macro, this percentage of
Okay.
macros,
Hmm.
fats, proteins, carbs. I don't like this food. I do like that food. Oh, by the way, I also want to keep in mind that my calcium needs to be hitting the, recommended daily allowance."
Yeah.
ChatGPT can spit that out
Oh my God.
in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And then you can go, "Oh, well, wait a minute. Actually, I don't want anything with tofu in it." And then it spits it out again.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Do
Hmm.
you realize how long that took before to write up a 7-day meal plan based on that criteria? It would take hours and hours and hours to just do the date,
Yeah.
to kind of fine tune it. Like, oh, the macros are just right, the calories just right, keeping in mind these different recipes. And it has that. It has full blown recipes.
Hmm.
Now, I'm not saying it's perfect, right?
That's what I was gonna ask. Yeah.
Sometimes it's still at the point where there is some sort of deviation,
Yeah.
right? Like you told it to stay above or stay below a certain amount of protein and it goes a little bit over, or a certain amount of calories, it goes a little bit over. But that's where having a professional do that
So yeah,
can help, I can,
trim
because
the
I'll just,
fat.
at this
Yeah.
point, I'll just do that in front of people.
Hmm.
I'm not trying to give anyone the impression that I spent hours doing a 7-day meal plan.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, hey, this is the best way to do it. It's the most economical,
Yeah.
time efficient way to do this. Here's some of the recommendations it's making. What do you think of these meals? I don't like that meal. I go, hey, do it again without meal 5 and replace meal 5 with something else
Yeah.
that's cheesier or whatever, right? And then boom, it's crazy. It's super awesome.
Yeah.
As far as nutrition coaching goes and meal planning specifically, it's awesome.
Yeah.
I would never ever want to go back to a time without that.
Do you think that's making stuff a little bit? Well, first of all, I was thinking like you kind of lose that human element of. I think people can tell when you're overusing AI now. Do you know what I mean? Like if I'm typing something, like I know people like use it for Instagram Reels, TikToks, descriptions and stuff like that. I think
Yeah.
we could spot out if AI is helping you a little bit too much now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. There are
Um,
certain YouTube videos I'll get recommended for whatever
right.
reason, and it has that
You could
AI
tell,
voice talking,
yeah.
and
Hmm.
sometimes that just turns me off.
That's what I was.
Like
Yeah.
I'll immediately just not do it.
Yeah.
So for sure, I think there is a balance.
Hmm.
But in the context of what I was just saying, I don't think there were any nutritionists, registered dietitians, nutrition coaches, whoever, who were writing up meal plans and finding great fulfillment
Hmm.
from spending hours and hours and hours doing it. Maybe there were a
Right.
few,
Yeah.
but I would argue the vast majority of them would not want to be doing that, right? The
Yeah.
reality is you want to help the person,
Hmm.
right? Maybe someone who's more recipe inclined, like someone who really loves cooking, might have preferred doing it that way, but I'm not that way. I'm much more utilitarian about
Hmm. Hmm.
about nutrition, right?
I think just like anything, if we overuse it, it's not good. But if you use it for, things that you could save time on,
Yeah,
it helps a
yeah,
lot. Just like anything, just like the phone in general. This is where, we run our businesses essentially now is
yeah,
just email people, call people, Instagram posts, TikToks.
yeah,
Everything is through your phone now. So it makes it a lot easier, but also you could abuse it or overuse it and
yeah,
just like scroll mindlessly
yeah.
through nothing. And that's also not good. But
I think the balance is if you lose your brand touch,
right.
right?
That's where I was
If
going.
you're
Yeah.
losing your brand touch, it's not feeling personalized anymore, right? And maybe sometimes you occasionally have to cross that threshold to know you did it,
Right.
but you're someone you take a lot of pride in what you do and personalizing things. So
And
I'm
that's,
sure if you did cross that threshold, you'd probably reel it back pretty quick.
well, you too, I would say, both of us. I think we both have that human element of authenticity and people could spot it out. But I think if you go too far into the AI making things too streamlined, we lose that human touch that people like.
Yeah,
And
I think you're right.
again, it's hard because we can't always be doing that. It's very time consuming, like you said. But if we could find that right balance of staying authentic to our clients, but also making things more streamlined, that's the perfect storm right there, I would say.
Yeah, I think you're right.
You
I
know.
think you're right. I think with automation, I understand people's fears with it. I have a ton of fears with it.
Hmm.
But I think when you're removing things that people didn't really like doing in the first place,
Hmm.
right? And hopefully that opens up other things for people to be doing. That's the fear, right? Is for all this efficiency, which really is going to
Yeah.
mean cutting of certain jobs.
Hmm.
Hopefully that opens up other doors,
Hmm.
right? But yeah, I think there's definitely some jobs out there that no one really wants to be doing, right?
Right.
Like how many, I don't know. I don't know all the ins and outs of this, but obviously there's a lot of talk about bringing manufacturing back to the United States.
Hmm.
And sometimes I wonder even about that, Maybe I'm just thinking of someone being on an assembly line, like taking a toy and going,
Okay.
you
You're
know what I
saying like
mean?
robots will replace that or something, or?
Well, I'm just saying who really liked doing that?
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah.
Is there anyone who was just stoked to be doing that every day? Maybe if that's what it took to provide
I
for
was
your
gonna say,
family,
yeah,
right?
maybe if they really needed it, they
Exactly.
do what it takes. But no, it's a interesting conversation, I think.
I think your point of balance, though, that's what it's going to come down
Hmm.
to. We've done so far as humans finding the balance,
But
right?
I think in general, we sway one towards one side too much sometimes, and then we revert back to the center. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like now that we have AI, we're probably gonna start overusing it a lot, and then in a few years, people are
Yeah.
gonna crave that human
Yeah.
connection again, and um, I don't think we could ever actually lose that or should lose that, the human connection.
No, I think if anything, professions that aren't really as affected by AI, like probably we're many, many years away, and robots too,
Right.
right? We're probably many, many years away from physical therapists, you know, robots
Being
or personal
robots.
trainer robots, right? And I think the more we go down that path, I think the more people are going to be craving human connection.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And so I think there will be doors that are going to open up, especially for people who are more people oriented, like
Right.
having conversations, like human connection. Because again, I mean, it's who we are, right?
Hmm.
We need that. We need connection, right?
Right.
That's a big part of I think what a lot of people are. There's a mental health crisis, right? A lot of
Yeah.
more people on pharmaceuticals to just get through the day than ever before, right? I think
Yeah.
a big part of that is just a lack of connection, right?
Yeah.
So I think people will find a way to get that. And maybe that's a way that'll create opportunities for people who are trying to work. So I
Yeah.
guess we'll see.
I guess we will see. But definitely, I think the human element is extremely important, and we can't lose that. But I'm thinking the future again. We're gonna sway too much more towards the robots and AI stuff, and then we'll come back to center again.
Usually the pendulum does swing back,
That's what
right?
I'm saying. Yeah,
Look at the
with
last
anything,
election.
yeah, yeah, with anything, things kind of come back. So, eh,
That's why I hedge my bets though. And
what
I
do you
say
mean
please and thank you
with AI
to the AI.
to the AI
Just
gods?
just not the gods, but
Oh, we're treating it like a
just,
god.
no, man, I'm just keeping in
Please,
mind.
master.
I'm hedging my bets. Don't we have something to ask it
I'm
anyways?
so sorry. Danny is apologizing to you,
Yes,
Chat
yes.
GPT.
Thank you. Appreciate
Hmm.
it.
Don't kill him. Okay. So, anyways, obviously, I'm a physical therapist. Danny's a personal trainer, and I was thinking we should ask Chat GPT, which I did ask it. What would you ask a personal trainer and a physical therapist sitting on a couch next to each other for
Specific,
for a
very
podcast?
specific.
Um, and it came up with a lot of good questions. I was skimming over them this morning, and I was like, "Oh, this is pretty good stuff." Um, but I think I wanted to start with because I asked it like 2 days ago the same question, and it gave me like a different question. One of the questions was, "What got you into the profession in general?" So let's go back and forth on this. I wanted to ask you what got you into personal training, and then I'll talk about my PT journey, and then we'll kind of go more towards the nuts and bolts of health and fitness with those questions. So, like, what got you into personal training?
When I was 16, I probably started working out. And then when I was 18, I made good friends with a buddy who actually I went to high school with, but we weren't friends in high school. We met at some bonfire and we both wanted a workout buddy. Then that's when I got hardcore, right? Like 6, 7 days a week, probably put on like 30 pounds of muscle in like a year or two, right?
Yep.
Went from 150, 45 pounds to about 180, 85 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And anyways, that was just something I really enjoyed doing.
Mm-hmm.
I also did not want to go the conventional educational route.
Okay.
It was something I've always struggled with the delay of gratification as far as my interest in a particular subject. So
Right.
gen education classes were always difficult for me
Mm-hmm.
because, again, part of why I think I had wanted to work for myself was just kind of, I want to understand the purpose behind why I do things,
Right.
right? And if I'm the one running the show, then I can make sure that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
So in the context of gen eds, I'm always wondering why. Why do I need to be taking a history class if my eventual goal is to, which it was pre-physical therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I was targeting NIU
Yeah.
and going to College of DuPage.
COD. Yeah.
Yep. And so I just got burnt out on that. Like these gen ed courses are just
From
killing
just
me.
school in general, you're
Yeah,
saying?
well, gen ed courses and the more traditional educational route, right? Like going to a college, university.
Did you like high school?
No,
Me neither.
no, no. And I struggled throughout school. I could spend a lot more time talking about this, but I won't.
We should. I mean, I think it's a good conversation. I hated school too. I despised school. It was not my favorite thing. Same thing. I don't like people telling me what to do. I didn't like sitting there. I didn't like taking tests. I was okay at them. I was relatively good at them, but
Yeah,
it doesn't negate the fact that I just didn't like it. But I just made myself study. I made myself go to class. It was a means to an end to me, but I definitely see your side to the story. Education is it's like a double-edged sword, you know what I mean? Like you don't have to do it, but
you
to
do the first 18 years.
yeah, right. And that to me made me not like it more just going through it.
Yeah,
Thankfully in college you get to study a little bit more of what you like.
yeah, you
So
have
that
more
was
choice.
right. It's the gen ed
Even with the
part.
schedule, that's a
Right.
relief.
But definitely the gen ed part, it wasn't fun either. It's just these basic classes. You're just sitting there like, all right, I took these in high school pretty much. It's the same thing.
It's a money grab.
Yeah, it probably is. And
There's no doubt that it is.
right.
Like who? Okay, you always ask a counselor. If you ask any counselor, oh, it's to be well-rounded. Well, what was the first 15 years of me going to school for?
Yeah, no.
Was that not to be well-rounded? Didn't I already take speech, history, this, that? I mean,
Yeah.
that was all to be well-rounded, wasn't it? So
Mhm.
why can't, by the time I'm here, just other countries do that,
Yeah.
right? Like I believe in Scotland and in the UK, at least from my understanding, 18 years, when you're 18 years old, it's university.
Mhm.
You go straight into specific studies regarding whatever your profession is going to
Mhm.
be,
Mhm.
which I don't understand why that wouldn't be the case. Why is there a need to be more general at that point?
Yeah.
When really, whenever you get into your career, it's not going to be general, right?
Not at all.
It's going to be whatever specific job whatever specific criteria is necessary for your job and soft skills, right? Just
Right.
like being able to have good communication skills and
Mhm.
good time management and whatever else, right?
Yeah.
But it's not going to be like there wasn't a time recently where a client recently asked me, "Hey, who was the 40th president?" And then I didn't answer and they fired me on the spot,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So I'm not saying there isn't any benefit because, there's obviously taking English for,
Yeah.
that many years and writing and all those things. I know that helps, right? In speech class, any of that stuff. I know
Mhm.
it helps. I use the word parallel and perpendicular a lot as a personal trainer. So shout out to geometry, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But that's all well and good in high school. I guess, again, my issue is more so that it was just continuing on with that. It's
Yeah.
like, really, we're still doing this,
Yeah.
right? And so I got burnt out, and I worked. I probably had like 16 jobs between the time I was 17 and 21,
Mhm.
working in the restaurant industry, car dealerships, etc. And eventually, I was a hard worker. I always have been.
Yeah.
And I got I met with a mentor, and I was kind of getting burnt out on, coming home smelling like food and dripping sweat for minimum wage. And I was like, I know I need to do something. I'm just not quite sure what it is.
Right.
I know I can't do this for the rest of my life. And he had a student who was going to the National Personal Training Institute, and he recommended it. I checked it out a week later. I loved it. I had such a good feeling about it. I enrolled. It was a year-long program, and it was the only personal training trade school in the country at the time. I think it still may be.
Okay.
And that's it.
Yeah. I think, well, for me, and I don't like saying I don't like school, but I didn't like school at
Yeah.
all. So I'm the same way. I was just a different. The way I thought of it was, again, it was a means to an end. And I hate saying I didn't like school because I want to have some PT students on one of these days. So
Yeah.
and I'll talk to them and interview them. Also some pre PT students.
Well, don't you think there's a big difference between having issues with school as much as issues with education, right? Like, I love learning. I love education,
Yeah, I see what you're
right?
saying.
But the school system is the
The
one
way they
that,
do it is not optimal for learning, I would say. But yeah, I mean, after I got through the gen ed stuff, it did get a little bit better. I studied more because my bachelor's in exercise science, and then it got more detailed with each class. It got more exercisey,
yeah,
for lack of a better term. And then I was like, oh, this is cool. I could actually study what I want to study. And we did
yeah,
some biomechanics stuff. We did some physiology stuff. Obviously, anatomy is huge with any medical field. So once we got to those classes, like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then, when I was in college, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew it was something medical, but it took me a while because, again, school just took up so much of my time. I just didn't have time to think about the future sometimes.
yeah,
And thankfully, my professors at North Central, they were like, hey, check out whatever. They veered me towards every medical profession. Like, hey, check out podiatry, check out pharmacy, check out dentistry, check out straight med school,
yeah,
check out PT. And then I forgot who it was, but one of my professors, she was like, try PT. You're more of a sporty guy. It's more of a sporty profession. You could shadow some sports PTs. Maybe you'll like it.
yeah,
And then I did that. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I didn't even know this is a thing. I knew nothing about the medical industry at all. Like,
yeah,
I'm first generation. Just me and my brothers went to college. Nobody in my family really went to college. So this was like me just learning on the fly. And, thankfully at North Central, they gave us some good guidance. So I'll
yeah,
always be thankful for that to them.
yeah. I've heard
Uh,
great things about North Central.
Especially
That's my
now.
wife's
That's
alumni
right.
school.
That's right. Especially now, it's a way better school. Like it's much more health science related. And the undergrad
Yeah,
students get a lot more attention. They get a lot more guidance towards the medical field.
yeah. My wife
Um,
was saying the new president has really changed it over there, where he's
yeah.
like heavily,
So yeah,
heavily going in on the STEM subjects and health and
right.
science.
So shout out to North Central. We love you
Nice.
guys. That's my school, my undergrad school. That is. But yeah, so when I shadowed PT stuff, I started working as a tech, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. This is kind of the little clinics. It was like the ones I shadowed. It was more private. It was like a little family. I was like, I could do this. Like this is, I'm treating more. I could treat more athletes in this type of scenario. But again, to get into PT school, it's super hard.
Yeah,
But so
yeah,
in my head, I was like, oh, it's more school. Like why do I keep doing this to myself?
he had a vision.
And yeah, and then obviously the student debt after PT school was insane. And one of these podcasts, I'll get into more of the details of that in a different podcast, but it was a lot of money.
Yeah,
And, I get PT students asking me all the time, like, is it worth it? Is it not worth it? Should I go to a cheaper school? That's maybe not as well known. It's such a lame answer, but I'm like, just follow what your heart says. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I went to out of state, more expensive school, I would say.
Why?
I just had a feeling.
You
I
just had a
just I
feeling?
just liked it. I liked it at Iowa. It's a great PT school. They were super nice to me there.
Yeah.
Their doors were always open. We could always talk to the instructors. It was great.
Yeah.
It was like a family, and I liked that. And I interviewed at different PT schools where it didn't feel like that.
Mm.
I just felt like it felt like school again, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah.
It felt like I was gonna be in a classroom all day. They don't care about us. Learn this, take the test, go away.
Yeah.
Whereas in, where I went to school, like it felt like we were all helping each other. The instructors were great. It felt like a family, and it was great. Obviously the money afterwards, when I looked at it, when I graduated, I was like, oh,
The debt.
I was like, dang, this is
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
But just like anything, man, you make it work. I lived at home. All my paychecks went to that debt. I paid most of it off.
That's awesome, dude.
There's no other way to do it,
Yeah.
and
My wife did the same thing.
yeah, you have to. And people complain about it, but what else are you gonna do? If it's something you love to do, you're gonna find a way to pay it off
Yeah.
or find a way to get to the finish line.
Yeah.
And thankfully I did. And uh I love it now, especially now that I'm on my own, like we talked about.
Yeah.
Um, Working. We'll get to that later, but I'll make a whole podcast about working for like more corporate healthcare systems, which
Yeah, I think that'd be good for just people who, like, for example, one of the guys who works for me, he's not going to school for physical therapy yet, but he's currently trying to get his GPA up.
yep, yep,
As you
the
mentioned,
whole
it's
process,
difficult
yeah.
to get into.
Mhm.
So he's going to be studying for his GRE soon.
That test.
All of that, right?
Yeah,
And so I think it'd be great to. I'm sure maybe there is references out there, but I think it would be great to do a whole podcast
yeah.
just on hey, here's all the things you need to consider
Hmm.
when considering pursuing physical therapy as a profession,
Yep,
right?
yep,
Money, as in the cost of
yep.
school, right? What your GPA needs to look like. I
Hmm.
think a lot of people need to hear that,
Yeah, yeah,
because I'm sure, like Ryan, for example, Ryan is sharp. He's really passionate. But when he was going to school for kinesiology, maybe there was a few classes he could have worked a little bit harder
yeah.
on
Hmm.
if he knew he would have needed to have his GPA at
Hmm.
this
Yep.
height
Hmm.
eventually, right? But he figured that out later, and hindsight's 2020, right?
I mean, I did the same thing. Like
Yeah,
after North Central, like I knew my GPA, like it wasn't bad,
yeah,
but I was like, I need something more. And
yeah,
I remember when I applied fresh out of North Central, like I didn't get anywhere. I got in no places. Nobody wanted to interview me. I got all rejections from every PT school I applied to. And then again, if you want something bad enough, you're gonna find a way to do it. So like I tried to build my resume. And again, I'll make a whole podcast about this probably, but I did more volunteer work. I did more observation hours. I worked at more PT clinics. Um, Basically, you have to make yourself the undeniable candidate. And
mm,
that's what I like to think I did, because the second time around when I applied, I got in pretty much anywhere. So, but it was a whole another year and a half, 2 years of taking more classes, volunteering,
mm.
observation hours. So it's tough,
Yeah,
but I love it now. So
yeah.
that's all that matters. You love what you do. So we're here.
Here we are
Here we are talking to AI.
talking
So
to
let's talk to
Chat
AI.
GPT.
Let's see. What do you got for us, Chat GPT? So the first question, well, second question technically. The first one was how we got into our professions, but the first one was, what are the most common mistakes you see people make in their exercise routines? We'll kind of riff off of this one.
Mm, that's a great question. I would say the first thing that comes to mind is just not having a vision.
Okay, like goals.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, you have goals, but you have maybe more generic goals, right? And you have a loose timeline for those goals,
Hmm.
right? And so a lot of people don't program, right?
Yeah.
They pick a few exercises and just start getting after it, right? And I think there's so much value in, not only anecdotally, but, research based, the idea of having macrocycles, microcycles. Not that you get to need to get so analytical with it, but, if you're just doing barbell bench press for 6 reps for 6 months, right? Your body's going to get so many diminishing returns after a certain amount of time of just doing that over and over and over again
Yeah.
versus switching it up with dumbbell press or doing different tempos, doing different rep ranges, right? And so I would say having a vision, but also creating, implementing different program design principles, I would say is going to be key, because not only that's going to help you be more effective over time, it's also going to help you prevent injury too.
Mm-hmm.
Because scenario one, where you're, again, barbell bench press for 6 months, 4 to 6 rep range, because you just want to go heavy, versus 3 months of going 4 to 6 and then follow that up, or 2 months of doing that. And then 2 months of going, hey, I'm going to do dumbbells and I'm going to do 8 to 12s. Right. And
Right.
then months 4 to 6, you're doing 10 to 15s with
Mm-hmm.
really slow and controlled to kind of give yourself a break from the heavier volume and the higher intensities, and then go back to lifting heavier, right? I think I've personally seen much better results doing that for myself, for others. Again, not only from a performance standpoint, but preventing injury
Mm-hmm.
that
Definitely.
way, then again, just kind of sticking to something and just kind of like, all right, now this is my thing now.
Yeah.
And not only that, but it gets boring doing that too, right? Which I think is probably another reason why people, how many people go into the gym and either A, are not successful in what they're doing, or B, they may be successful for a short amount of time and then bye bye,
Right.
right? Health clubs count on that,
Yep.
right? And part of that is just, I believe, being ambivalent about what you're doing, right? If you're not certain why you're stepping foot into the gym and what you're going to be working on and what you're working towards,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be easier not to go on the days that you're tired or you're stressed and you didn't sleep as much,
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, and it's raining outside or whatever,
Yeah. The
right?
rain. Yeah.
So I think, again, being more clear on your vision, implementing different aspects of program design to have variety, to keep it interesting, to keep you progressing, to stave off injury. I think those are all probably some of the most
Right.
key things.
Especially now, like we're coming towards the end of the year here, so people are gonna start going to the gym for their New Year's resolution stuff pretty soon. So
Yeah.
you're gonna get a lot of people rushing into the gym, and
We have a smaller health club, so I'm
mm-hmm.
not sure we will. I've always found that I start to notice an increase in personal training more so around February, March.
Okay,
And
yeah,
my theory on that is that's around the time people are realizing, oh, whoops, this isn't as easy as I
they don't
thought
know
it
what.
was.
Yeah,
I've been doing the elliptical for a month and nothing's
nothing's
happening,
happening.
right?
Yeah.
So, uh, but occasionally it does work out like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it works out more like that in larger health clubs
Yeah, yeah,
where you get just that huge rush.
right. So yeah, the question was
What are the mistakes that you see people,
common mistakes.
common
Yeah,
mistakes?
I guess it's asking like very in a general sense, but I was thinking more so like when someone walks into my clinic or whatever. But
It's kind of harder for you because no one, people don't typically do physical therapy on their own.
right, well, yeah, but at the same time, like we're well versed in exercise, so
Yeah.
I would say, I mean, just some like general
Can I
things
give you
that.
a suggestion?
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe relative to what your profession is, what about one of the things you do is manual therapy, right? Soft tissue work,
Mm-hmm.
right? What are maybe some of the mistakes you see people make doing self soft tissue
Self
therapy?
myofascial release,
Yeah,
whatever you
yeah.
want to call it, the
Yeah, yeah.
buzzwords, and I'll get to
Foam
that.
rolling, lacrosse
I'll
balls.
narrow it down the more I give you this answer, but I think common mistakes I think we see people make, let's say in the gym, are um, they don't warm up at all. They just walk in, they start lifting weights.
Oh yeah. I
You
see
know what
that
I
all
mean?
the
They
time.
just walk in, they start doing some circles with their arms or something, and they start benching.
Yeah.
You should
Yeah.
warm up before any form of exercise,
I don't know how many times my golfer clients are hurting their backs. And I
especially
say, "Did you warm up?" And they're like, "Yeah, I
yes,
mean, I did. I took my golf club and did this a few times." And I go, "Dude, that's not a warm up."
right. Especially if it's more specific to a sport,
Yeah.
you definitely should be doing specific sport specific warm up stuff prior to your actual sport. Even weightlifting, you could probably get away. Well, I shouldn't say that either because you should prime your nervous system and your body to the movements you're going to be doing,
Yeah.
and I think people should be warming up more than they should, more than they think they should be doing.
If you look at some of the best power lifters, I mean, they will do a lot of work just to get to their first work set.
Hmm.
Tons of weight acclimation sets, right?
Yep.
Part of it is because they're super niche about what they're doing, right? They're not going to come in and do
Hmm.
15 exercises. They might just do the big three and maybe like a couple accessory things and call it a day.
Right.
But, if they're doing it,
Right.
being probably more athletically gifted, more
Sure.
having a better base, then it's definitely going to be applicable for the average person too.
And I think, yeah, warming up. So, number one, I would say is warming up. Also, when you're younger, you could probably get away with not warming up as much. So, like, I'm
For
trying to
sure.
reel this back into the more rehab injury stuff from my perspective. Is when you get older, you get more aches, more pains, more stiffness. So, I think the older you get and the more seasoned veteran you are in the game of going to the gym or whatever sport you do, you're gonna have to warm up more. So
Yeah.
we can't be skipping those things in terms of prevention of injury, stuff like that. Also, so warming up, I would say, common mistake in the gym or in working out. Number two, I would say, kind of what you said, too much too soon. Like
Yeah.
they again, they don't go in with a plan or a vision, and maybe the New Year's people, like after the New Year, they go in, they start thinking they can bench a lot and they hurt themselves
Yeah.
or they feel something weird in their shoulder or in
Hmm.
their back or something trying to deadlift. So I would say slow and steady wins the race. So
Yeah.
I would say number two would be going too hard too soon. So start slow at first,
Yeah.
build up. Just like anything, you need to acclimate towards whatever you're
Absolutely.
doing. I don't care what it is. So definitely weights and sports. You have to build yourself up to tolerate more load, um, whatever you're doing in sports. So I would say warming up too much too soon. And if we're talking just general gym exercises, I would say it's improper form is
Yeah.
number
No
three.
doubt.
And again, that's why we're here to guide them to have better form, to not injure themselves, to not hurt themselves. And I think you could see something on YouTube, try it out. Some people get it,
Yeah.
and they're gifted enough to, watch the motor pattern on a YouTube video, and they just right away they get it. But some people need more hands-on cueing,
Yeah.
tactile cueing of push your hips back more, or maybe you touch somebody in the back right here and like, hey, do it this way, or whatever type of cueing they respond to. They might need an extra pair of hands to get them to have more proper form.
Yeah. I would say there's a misconception that personal trainers either A, work with people who just want to be absolutely jacked, or B, are working with like the biggest loser, right?
You don't
But
do those two things
I mean,
only.
occasionally that will happen, but the reality is there is so many people who reach out just wanting to make sure that they are working towards their goal and not getting hurt. I mean, I get the whole idea of I just want to make sure I'm not getting hurt. I just want to make sure I'm doing things the right way, using proper form. I get that
Hmm.
so often,
Right.
right? So I think you're spot on with that.
Especially when it comes to rehab and injury and people in pain, is our form has to be great,
Yeah.
pristine, as I always say, because when you're dealing with someone trying to exercise, which you should be exercising with pain to a degree,
Mhm.
obviously, if it's too much on the pain scale, like 10 out of 10, we can modify some things. But if it's less than a 5 out of 10 on the pain scale or around the 5, we can modify it, maybe tweak a few things. But you should be
I'm just laughing thinking about someone just 10 out of 10 pain or
right, yeah,
just
doing a
screaming
deadlift or
through
whatever.
every rep.
Yeah, no, but
Ah!
and that's when you modify things is you lighten the load, You adjust the form.
Yeah.
You make sure they're not overdoing it,
Yeah.
especially, when it comes to PT and physical therapy. We can't hurt them more, obviously. That's our whole job. But
Oh, you would hope not.
our whole job, I describe it to people as like we're trying to stress the injured area in a way, but also not overdo it. So it's that gentle balance of stressing it to adapt and promote an adaptation, a positive adaptation to get stronger, reinforce the area, desensitize the area, while also not, like I said, overdoing it too much too soon. And that's essentially our job, is to stress a certain area but not overdo it.
Yeah.
So, which again is an art form, as I always say. It's a science. It's also an art because people respond to different things differently, as you
Yeah.
know. So I would say the three things I said was warming up, too much too soon, and form.
Mhm.
I just top of my head, I would say those three
Yeah, I
things.
think that's a
Anything
great
else you could
list.
think of?
I think
People.
that's a great start.
Okay, let's go back to AI. Q&A with AI. Let's see what they or it they. I don't know. Robot.
I'm not even gonna
Should I
touch that one.
apologize to it?
You should always
I'm
apologize.
sorry, Chat GPT. Don't
Just
kill
veer
me.
on the side of caution with
My
AI.
phone just blows up. We just
Yeah.
die.
That would be a viral moment, Jerry, if your hand just
Just
exploded out of
explodes and I
anger.
have no hand or whatever. Let's see. Number 2, where is it? How can someone balance strength? It was a good one. How can someone balance strength, flexibility, and endurance for overall health? So balancing those three things, which are very important.
Are we talking about cardiovascular endurance or muscular endurance?
We could do both, all of them. Under that umbrella of endurance, we have to put both, I would say.
Well, first off, it always depends on why do you want any of
Completely
it,
agree. Yep. Hmm.
right? What do you need cardio? I mean, obviously, I could generally say cardiovascular endurance, you want a baseline level of activity in your life just for cardiovascular health,
Hmm.
right? Being on your feet more, walking more, etc., right?
Hmm.
So there is value, like you've talked about, even just from a pain standpoint, right? Of getting that 20 minutes, 10 minutes or so on the cardio equipment,
Yeah.
just getting things moving. But there's also that cardio benefit, right? Of just,
Yep.
it's better for your heart to be more active,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
But then from there, it goes, well, what do you need cardio for?
Hmm.
Is it going to, I mean, a football player has completely different cardiovascular needs than a wrestler, right?
Yes.
Than a weekend warrior, right? Et
Yep.
cetera, et cetera. So it's hard to answer that question as without knowing exactly why someone
Completely agree.
is doing what they're doing,
Hmm.
right? So my answer to that would just say, hey, it all depends on what your priorities are and what you're working towards, because it may be times that it's prudent not to have balance, right?
Hmm.
Because if you're a power lifter, it may not be all that important for you to have muscular endurance, right? Or if you're a runner, it may not be all that important for you to spend a ton of time doing max strength training.
Hmm.
There may be benefits of occasionally doing
Hmm.
stuff that's fast twitch, but
Right.
it all really depends on what they're working
On their
towards.
goals. That's exactly what I was thinking. Is it depends on what the person is working towards. Like I had Brad on the previous podcast, and he's a jujitsu guy. He does a lot. He's a uh,
Is he the BJJ lab owner?
hmm yeah. You met
Nice.
him once. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. But again, he wants to do more jujitsu. So what's the point of him deadlifting 600 pounds or whatever? I guess it'd be nice, but not saying he can't do that. But again, on the spectrum of his training, he wants to focus more so on technique, on jujitsu, on being nice and healthy for his specific sport.
Yeah.
You could structure in some weight training, obviously, to supplement the jujitsu and get stronger in certain areas. But like I was telling him, you don't want to be burning the candle at both ends. It depends on what your goals are. If you're
Hmm.
doing both full force, it's just a recipe for injury. You're going to be
Yeah,
exhausting yourself,
no
overtraining
doubt. Because
yourself.
jujitsu is tough on your body.
Yes, and then you're weight training at you know 5 times a week as well. Like that's not smart.
There's not
Maybe if
balance.
you're super young and you're whatever, you could get away with it, but it's also not a good habit to get into, I would say. So definitely your goals, number one, like what's the person's goals?
Yeah.
And then we go from there. That's how we balance things out. Those four things that AI said. Uh, but if we're talking just structuring things, I would say, tell me if you agree with this, but not that you can't get away with it, but maybe trying to separate out cardio from weightlifting, especially high intensity cardio. Like you don't want to be
Oh
doing
yeah.
high intensity. I guess it depends on how
If
you
you did it,
structure
you'd
the.
want to do it at the end.
Yeah, it depends how you structure the variables, but if you're doing a super high intensity weight training session and then you do a super high intensity cardio afterwards, you're just gonna be burning yourself out. But if you wait a day, do it the next day,
Yeah.
recover a little bit. In terms of structure, I would say that's a smarter progression, a smarter programming, I would say.
Yeah, and I think one thing that you need to look at too is the consequences of the order, right? So for example, if you do cardio before strength training, you could say both are important. It's important to have cardiovascular health. It's important to strength train for the purpose of building muscle and getting stronger, etc.,
Hmm.
right? But if you do a lot of cardio before strength training, there's going to be major consequences to your strength training, right?
Hmm.
Whereas if you do strength training first and then cardio after, there's not going to be many consequences to your cardiovascular training
Right.
doing the strength training first, especially if you're doing more steady state cardio
Hmm.
and not all out intensity
Right.
cardio, right? So I think that's important too, is just understanding how doing things in different orders is going to impact the overall outcome, right? So again, and I think that comes down to priorities too.
Agreed. Your goals, like what are you working towards, and how can we structure that for the client for prevention of injury and not exhausting them? So,
Well, that's a whole nother thing. If you're already exhausted cardio wise, that's another good point.
right.
And then you go into strength training, you're going to
Yeah,
be that much more likely to hurt yourself.
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Then fatigue sets in, and then your form suffers, and then you tweak something, then you're out for 3 months or something. And then you got to
Yeah.
come see me and I fix you.
Yeah. One more thing on the
I yell at
cardio.
you first, and I fix you.
One more thing about the cardio is I think it's also just important to understand just because you're on a machine, like an elliptical or a treadmill, does not mean you are doing something different than what you do in your day-to-day life, right? It what exercise is you adapting to a stimulus being put on your body,
Hmm.
right? And the stimulus needs to be intense enough to
Yeah. Moving the
just
old couch.
moving and shaking.
Also, my leg's asleep, so I'm trying to
Dude,
adjust,
that's why I
but
keep moving. That's why I keep moving
my
my leg.
hip is like dead or something.
Seriously, maybe we need to
No blood flow
get like
here.
the little bowl chairs or
We could
something.
foam roll out. Brian's
There
got
we
a foam
go.
roller somewhere, but
Nice.
anyways, we'll save that for
Doesn't
later.
that almost look like a giant foam roller?
I don't know what that is, a rug or
It's a rug,
something.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Anyways,
I don't know where I was.
it's all good.
Back to
Back to
ChatGPT.
AI.
Yeah.
Back to AI. Let's see. So that was number two, balancing everything, strength, flexibility, endurance for overall
Oh,
health. Go ahead.
so if you walk to your car or school or through the hallways at work at 2.5 miles per hour,
Hmm.
right? And then you go to the gym and you hop on an elliptical at 2.5 miles per hour or a treadmill at 2.5 miles per hour. You're really not doing anything all that different
Hmm.
than what you do. Now, is that better than nothing? Sure. That being said, I would say, again, if you're trying to maximize your time with exercise, you want it to be distinctively different from what you're doing in your day to day life, right?
Right.
So you're going to get a whole lot more value walking twice as fast or going into a light jog or doing anything that is going to be distinctively different from what you're doing in your day to day life because you've already adapted to the things you're doing in your day to day life, right? Because it's what you do in your day to day life. Where again, I see so often people will just go on the elliptical and
Yeah.
it's like, okay, that's something, but that pace, just because you're on a piece of a machinery, doesn't mean it's going to be that effective if your intensity is so low,
Yep.
right? Again, you could make the argument that some motion is better than no motion. It's just going to be me and Jerry squirming the whole
Just-
time. So, anyways, that's all I wanted to say about the cardio. I would say if you want to
yeah.
get more value out of cardio, I would just say try to make the intensity at least noticeably higher than whatever you're doing in your day-to-day
Yeah.
life.
I'm also struggling to see which camera I gotta look at now that Brian told me that. It's okay. Got it. That one. Okay.
The green one
I
or
was
the
like, is
red
it the
one?
green one or red one? It's the
Or
red
the
one.
yellow one?
It's yeah. I don't even know anymore, but I look at all three. But I think that's a good point because
Just like your eyes. Just go
just
both ways.
Um, now I forgot what I was gonna
That would be cool.
say. But I think it's
I
important.
think we were going to go back to that until I wanted to go back on cardio.
Oh, here's my thought. Good point about like if you're just doing the same thing in the gym as you do with everyday activity. I think the main point is like you're not stressing your body enough to create that adaptation that you want. If you're doing the same thing, it's not stressing your body, it's the same thing. So your body's not going to adapt to it.
Yeah, exactly. The analogy I use is if you go out into the sun right now, it's December. If you go outside for
Unfortunately.
10 minutes and just lay, first off, that might be
No,
uncomfortable because it's
no.
fairly cold. But, if you just lay there, you're not going to get tan. Why not? You were laying outside in the sun, but the stimulus is so weak that there's going to be no changes.
Hmm.
It's the same thing with the gym. If the stimulus is not strong enough, you will not make change.
And again, that's a big part of both of our jobs is we want to create that stimulus that's effective enough, but also not overdo it to where we injure them or hurt
Yeah,
them
so you get sunburnt,
or
right?
they hate us or whatever because you made them do too much and then they tweak their knee or something. You know
And
what I
that
mean?
goes back to what you were saying about your point one
Hmm.
or point two, actually, I
Hmm.
think, was going in too soon, right? Like you've barely prepared your tendons and ligaments and muscles for heavy pressing. You've been working out for 1 month and then boom, I'm going to do heavy bench press,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
That's that sunburn
Yep.
because you just did something that the stimulus was too strong for what you were prepared for.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Number 3. What's your opinion on the role of technology in tracking fitness and recovery? So I'm guessing it's talking about like
Dude, I'm currently loading creatine and I'm so incredibly thirsty.
the wearables. But yeah,
The
I
wearables,
was gonna say yeah. What kind of creatine? What
uh,
brand?
it's whatever Vitamin Shop sells.
Steroids?
It's creatine.
That's yeah. Which is steroids, right?
Do you think so?
That's like a meme
Oh
online. It's
yeah, no, it is crazy. Like I have some clients who will occasionally start taking creatine and they're going,
that's what I'm saying.
"Hey man, I'm thinking about taking
Am
creatine."
I
And
gonna die or whatever?
I'm like, "That's cool."
I'm like, yes, you are gonna die.
It's literally the most researched supplement there is. Creatine monohydrate is the most
I've
researched
been taking it
supplement.
since high school, I think. Yeah.
And I think don't quote me on this, but I've heard they're even coming out with studies that creatine use in elders, seniors is good for
Mm,
preventing neurological degenerative
the old
diseases.
noggin. Yep.
And that's crazy.
Hmm.
Again, considering creatine monohydrate is so cheap compared to so many supplements, the fact that it's so irrefutably beneficial. Anyways,
I was wondering if Chat GPT is gonna ask us about supplements, which would be kind of fun to talk about.
yeah.
You know, like how much test are you on or all that stuff. D-ball.
Not enough,
I
brother.
know, right? It's never enough. Oh yeah, wearables. So like I'm assuming the Aura rings, the Whoop straps.
Wearables?
Yeah, wearables.
What's the question?
Like what's your opinion on those wearables that track fitness activity?
I'm
So
not the one to ask. I don't use them.
me
And
neither.
I'm not saying you shouldn't, right? I I take that back. I briefly was doing a Fitbit, right?
Hmm.
That being said, I would say going back to balance and values and kind of prioritizing those things. I don't like being so removed from my being present on a regular basis.
Yes.
So I found that, and I think people are even prone to this with fitness tracking, like MyFitnessPal or Live. The cut is going to be back here by the end of it from us adjusting, but that's my issue with it, right? If I really had a hardcore reason to use any of those, I would. That being said, I don't like the whole, oh, how many steps am I at? What's my heartbeat? What's this? What's that? I just want to live life, man.
Yeah, it's a little neurotic.
It's a little neurotic to
Hmm.
me. But there are people out there who really balance that well. Like I have some clients who are probably a bit more type A in nature and
Hmm.
maybe a bit more analytically driven, and that really works well for them. But for me, and I think a lot of people, if you're not so devil in the details, really analytically driven, I think you could probably do without it just fine.
I mean, do you get people asking you all the time about? I get it all the time.
No?
Like all my patients are like, "Hey, they come in with their Whoop straps, with their Aura rings. Like, what do you think about this? What's your opinion on whatever the new hot wearable is. I just tell them as long as it's not interfering with, like you said, like some people are overly consumed with data
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, I need to do this perfectly and do all this to the T because if
Yeah.
not, my whole world blows up.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the athletes I work with, they're very, like you said, type A, and it's hard to get them to reel back and just kind of chill a bit.
Yeah.
Like, don't be, especially when they're injured,
Yeah.
they start getting really frustrated, really stressed.
Yeah.
That stresses them out even more. The ring or the whoop strap or whatever. I'm like, just forget about that for now. Let's focus on um, the injury at hand that you have: knee injury, back pain, neck pain, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think there were some studies that came out that says they're not even that accurate.
I wouldn't be surprised if they aren't. And I also have an issue with things that train people to suppress their intuition, right? Because ideally, if you were listening to your body and making a habit of doing that, you wouldn't need an app to tell you you're overtraining or you
Mm-hmm.
need to sleep in or you need to maybe take a day off working out.
Mm-hmm.
I know that, right? A lot of people know that, right? I mean, I have that happen all the time where clients will come in and just say, I just don't think I have it today, right? And am I going to just go at that workout with full intensity how I always do
Mm-hmm.
with them? No. We may foam roll a bit more in the beginning that day, right? We may cut the exercises by 33%, right? Or switch up completely, right? Like, hey, we've talked about wanting to do more with the battle ropes. Do you want to just take a break from weights today, right? People have a sense for what their body is telling them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're going to be better off in the long run just listening to that and honoring it. That's a huge step, right? Because how often do we know we're tired, know we're not feeling well, and just drink an extra cup of coffee, right? And power through, right? So that would be one of my concerns with getting too reliant on those wearables is just rather than just listening to your own intuition, you're waiting for a device to tell you what your intuition is or what your reality is.
That's kind of what we were just talking about in the beginning is like relying on AI too much, relying on
Yeah.
technology too much. You lose that intuition, like you
Yeah, you're
said,
going to need
that.
a device to tell you to pee soon. Hey, your bladder's getting full. Might need to
Yeah.
run to the bathroom.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, right? That's obviously an extreme point, but that is where I'm going with the intuitive nature of just listening to your body.
Yep.
It will tell you what you need to do, right?
Yeah.
And and some of these, according to you, some of these studies are showing that there
I'd have
is.
to look into it more. I'm pretty sure there's a systematic review talking about how they're not as accurate as we think. So what's even the point? Um,
I don't know how you really could even be too aware of what your body's telling you
yeah.
without getting blood work and maybe measuring your cortisol levels
Mm-hmm.
and your inflammatory markers, right? Like if your inflammatory markers and cortisol are super high, maybe that's a sign that your body's majorly stressed out or
Yeah.
in need of recovery
Chilling a
and
bit.
chilling.
Yeah.
Short of that, I don't know how you would. But again, I'm not here to bash
Right.
the wearables because I haven't really looked too much into it. But I
Okay.
would say
Really?
that
Yeah.
my main concern with it would just be people not getting as comfortable just expressing their intuition.
Wrap it up. Yeah. Okay. Man, we only got like a.
Is that seriously?
I guess so. That
Holy,
was fast.
that was crazy
Uh,
fast. It's just like last time. You sent me 18 questions
we
and we
got
got
through
there like
three.
one or two, right? Yeah, three at
Oh
most.
man. All right. I was gonna go off of that, but that's fine. We're kind of late. This is a good last question to end on. It's a big topic in exercise and fitness. Is what are the signs of overtraining?
That's a great lead off of what we were just talking
Right.
about.
I like it. Um.
Do you want to start since
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say like very general guidelines to see if you're overtraining is aches and pains, um, poor sleep, interrupting your sleep at night if you're overtrained. Also, elevated heart rate, I think, at rest is a sign of overtraining. Elevated blood pressure at rest is also a sign of overtraining. Mood disturbances, hormonal things is also a sign of overtraining. Guys get um, like erection difficulties, libido, problems with libido, women, menstruation, things like that. Um, I've seen that in the clinic where people come in and they're like, I haven't had my period in X amount of time, or a guy comes in, he's like, I can't get an erection for whatever, and they're overtrained
Hmm.
because I see most of the people I see, it's on the other side of the spectrum where they're very athletic, they're in good shape, maybe they're overdoing it, and they're getting injured and they're causing more harm than good. But so I would say those things, like the physiological markers, hormonal things, sleep disturbances, and general aches and pains are a good sign that you're overtraining. Can you think of anything else?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I would say first off, overtraining is a trend, right? Overtraining isn't I have one day that I'm tired, one day that I feel achy,
Mm-hmm.
one day that I don't want to go to the gym, right? Overtraining is a trend of those things happening,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because there's always going to be days that you have off days, right? But if you're noticing a trend of your body being achier than usual, if you're noticing a trend of feeling less enthusiastic about going to work out, right? Or just generally feeling more fatigued
Mm-hmm.
and more tired, right? All of those, I think, or another one is just your numbers, right? If you're starting to get diminishing returns, with all variables being the same, you're sleeping just as much, you're eating the same, you're training the same, et cetera, and you're starting to notice diminishing returns on your workouts, that would be another sign I would believe
Mm-hmm.
that you'd be overtraining. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say with overtraining, one, is it a trend? Because it's not necessarily overtraining if it's not a trend of these patterns, right? And looking at things like what's your enthusiasm for exercise? Has it reduced, right? Are you just generally more fatigued throughout your day to day, right? Are you noticing diminishing returns from your workouts, right? And again, all of these things are trends. I would say those are some of the best indicators for overtraining that I've seen that are again are intuitive, right? It's not necessarily something that you don't need to go
Right.
to a doctor or anything like that. Not that there
It's
isn't
just
value in that from time to time.
Yep, just adjust the variables that you can control, like well, as best you can, obviously, the exercise variables, your sleep, your nutrition, hydration, all that stuff, but it's hard to reach that overtraining state, but, when you work with people who are in a highly trained state already, they could, you know, they could get there, and
Yeah.
it's hard for me to tell them back off a little bit because they hate hearing that, um, but yeah, those are pretty good signs of overtraining, and
Plus, I think a lot of it is having to balance your life because stress is stress, right?
mhm,
There's eustress, there's distress. But that being said, a large amount of accumulative stress is still a large amount of an accumulative stress.
yep,
So, if you're, again, I see this with clients all the time. If you've been having this deadline at work that is requiring a lot from you, right? Later days,
mhm.
sleeping, let's say it's not even affecting sleep, right? But it's just more stress on you on a day-to-day basis trying to meet this deadline. Even that can affect overtraining, right? And so again, that can be one of those things where scale back, right?
Mhm.
per- you know, it doesn't always need to be black and white like you're all in or you're all out. If your frequency normally is four strength training sessions a week or jujitsu and strength training or whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
Maybe on those weeks, go 50%. That's not the end of the world, right? And I think what's interesting about it is we're talking about type A people. You can end up kind of in this vicious cycle of, oh, well, I have a lot I need to do. And these are the things that make me feel good, but I can't really go about those things the way I want to. So now I'm stressed out that I can't perform at the level I want to. And then it's just this vicious cycle, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes you just need to live and let go, accept that you can't go all in all the time on everything, right?
Yep.
And that even brings it even more full circle back to what we were talking about earlier with owning a business,
Right.
right? There's going to be just times where your priorities have to shift, and that's okay. That's okay,
Easier said than done, but
right?
yeah, it's the mental game is very real, as I tell people all the time, and do your best to play the long game because, like you said, if you're having a rough week, you feel like crap. it's okay to back off. But again, telling somebody that is also an art because they don't want to hear it. So there's a way of communicating that to certain types of people that hopefully you've grown to build a relationship with, that you know how what they respond to, and you can talk to them in an effective way to get through to them because they trust us as health professionals.
Well, that
But
is why they call it personal training.
yep. Anyways, my leg's falling asleep. It is asleep. Should we just stretch out for the last 2 minutes,
Yeah, there we
and then
go.
we'll get a thumbnail or something, and then we'll call it. But anyways, you want to plug some stuff?
DannyGustinFitness.com, Danny Gustin Fitness Podcast,
Oh man,
best personal training in Naperville the last 5 out of 6 years. Great. Very glad to know Gerry. He's an amazing physical therapist. He's helped me a lot. He's helped clients, and he's amazing at what he does, and I'm happy
thank
to
you.
be here.
I appreciate that. But yeah, you guys can find me on APT. Sorry, you can find me on Instagram at APT Dr. G if you have any questions on pain, injury, back pain, knee pain, ankle pain, whatever pain. I'll help you guys out. But that's it. That's all we
And my
got.
podcast is on YouTube.
YouTube, all the platforms, on everything.
Just YouTube.
Just YouTube.
Mhm.
Okay. But yeah,
What do you say?
he said it's not a podcast.
Well,
He's
whatever.
calling you out. But
Whatever, Brian.
but thanks for watching. We appreciate
What do you know?
it.
You just have a podcast business.
And we're gonna stretch out and
Audio Hive Podcasting.
get a thumbnail,
out.
and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.